And we cannot only rely on command and control, government legislation. Government legislation is important as a stimulator and driver, but sometimes it can even be in the way. I remember doing a project with Bayer Crop Science some years ago here in the Philippines to engage their suppliers. And the biggest reason why the suppliers didn't want to get involved in an environmental project was because they thought, oh, once we're on the radar screen of people, then maybe people start knocking on our door that never were bothered about us and they want something from us. And they come in, oh, you're not complying with this environmental legislation. So sometimes command and control, especially if it's, not implemented in a very straightforward manner, can become a barrier to environmental innovation because people want to sit back and not do anything so they don't get on the radar screen. But when we are looking at the power of the market, government, besides pushing things, should as well start stimulating the market by actually demanding environmental products and services. We need to change the market from inside. We need to support it with infrastructure legislation, but we need to create demand in the marketplace. We as individuals need to start looking for eco-efficient buildings. We need to communicate the value of a lower carbon footprint and a lower electricity bill and a better climate. Less air emissions if you use the poison, knocks out paint. This is serious stuff. We don't look at the cost of pollution to society through the health system. How much taxpayers' money gets wasted by us having to clean up through the health system the results of pollution. And one thing that I have experienced, and I'm not sure, whether other people experience that as well, maybe not because you live here all the time. Every time I come to Manila, I stay here 1 week, I come home with throat infection. There is a massive amount of pollution here in the air in Metro Manila. There is no other place in the world where I go regularly and I come back with a throat infection. I thought, what's happening? Until I realized every time I stay 5+ days in Manila, that's it, I've got it. So now I'm really trying to prevent it, by taking strepsils already by the day I arrive. Because it's going to hit me. I know it. So we need to work together in this city for the sake of the children of this city. We need to focus on really turning our planet into a planet that gives future generations a chance of survival. It's about CO2 emissions, it's about carbon footprint, but it's as well about the emissions out there that are destroying our lives, our lungs, and make a lot of negative environmental impact. The reality of the kids today in our cities is a different one than 50 to 100 years ago. The reality of the kids in my village is a different one than the reality I had 35 years ago. This was 2 years ago, a winter where they had close to 0 snow and they couldn't ski at all. The children from all over the world are challenging us. What are we doing for the sake of their future? Green buildings is a massively important subject. As the High Commissioner mentioned earlier this morning, according to United Nations Environmental Programme statistics, our industry, construction and buildings, 30 to 40% of the world's carbon dioxide emissions come from our industry. That is huge. That is massive. 5% of the world's CO2 emissions come from commercial buildings and the ongoing carbon footprint that they have. 10% come from domestic buildings, the ongoing carbon footprint of our houses that we live in. That's only 15%, right? Where does the other stuff come from? Vehicles? Yes, but I mean in relation to the 30 to 40% that come from our industry. If the carbon footprint of buildings, the energy-related stuff, is only 15% of the world's CO2 emissions, where does all the other stuff come from? One big one is construction resulting in land use change. And this is happening One of the things I do in Malaysia, I've started a voluntary movement called Eco Warriors Malaysia. Peaceful warriors. It's easy to talk. And we know all of these conferences that we go to. We talk a lot, right? But what counts is action on the ground. Results, deliverables, measurable outputs. We've started in Malaysia to mobilize young people to do tree planting, recycling, voluntary movement. We don't have any money, we don't have any budgets, but people's time and passion can make a big change. One of our guys is part of a forest community inside of the city. Just as we speak, early this week, some construction project that was approved overnight without public consultation was moving in to cut down some of the trees that were planted last year by many volunteers. This is happening in our inner cities. What are we doing about it? And it's a construction project that's encroaching on an inner city forest area. So land use change is a big one in terms of our industry. But one thing that we often neglect is the building materials themselves. Cement manufacturing alone is responsible for approximately 6 to 7% of the global CO2 emissions. That's double than all the planes in the world together. We think about aviation and flying as a big carbon footprint. Yes, it is. But not many people think about cement as one of the main contributors to climate change. If we then add steel to it, cement and steel together, that's about 10% of the world's carbon dioxide emission that come from the manufacturing of those two core building materials. Cement alone is burning of limestone. Limestone is calcium carbonate, CaCO3. We burn it and we release the CO2 that was captured in the limestone, in addition to releasing loads of CO2 when we burn coal or other fuel to heat up the cement kiln to 1,600 Celsius. 1 ton of cement, which is 1,000 kilo, in average globally results in 1 ton, 1,000 kilo of carbon dioxide.